And good afternoon. It is 2 p.m. Saturday, 2 p.m. Central Time, Saturday, March the 2nd, 2019. I'm Leon Davis, and you're tuned into Altitude Adjustment. I want to thank you very much for taking this opportunity to join me this afternoon. I've been doing my podcast for almost a year and a half, maybe, and I really enjoy the podcast. And one of the things that I like to do is I go back through the podcasts and make sure that the message that I was putting forth during that podcast was the point I was trying to make. And sometimes when I'm doing the podcast, it runs a little long and I have to cut parts of the podcast out to meet the time frame. So I want to do it in a 30-minute podcast. I want to stay as close to that as possible, and that's what I work towards. So this particular podcast is about clearing up or bringing a finer point on some of the podcasts that I have done previously.
Welcome to Altitude Adjustment.
So last week I did a podcast, I called it Mean and Green, and it was about the Green New Deal. And one of the things that I missed mentioning about the Green New Deal is I believe we should learn to work smarter and not harder. You hear that a lot in business. You probably should hear that a lot in life. But working smarter simply means not being able to do things in a better way and not just sweat and work and hard. It's just doing things in a better way, in a smarter way. And so right now, to try to meet our energy needs, we drill. We run a drill in the ground. They have to do sometimes excavation. They have to try to find where their oil reserves at. And so they dig, and some of the byproducts of that can be earthquakes. There's waste that has to be managed, and that can possibly contaminate parts of the our planet. And working smarter, so the Green New Deal is an attempt at using renewable energy that puts less of a tax on our ecology, on how we live in the space that we sleep at, where we build our homes, where people live, and still meet our energy needs. So as I mentioned, in order to get oil, that has to be, you have to dig, you have to bring the oil up, it has to be taken from the drill site to a processing plant and then shipped out to the different places that we're going to get our energy from, that we're going to use. Working smarter with solar energy, take for instance, you create solar panels, you can put them on the roof, and you generate your own energy. There's no, now to get the raw materials, there may be some digging, but you basically, the energy can be created right from a rooftop solar panel, enough energy actually for communities to share. That we're working smarter. We don't have to dig. We don't have to, there's no danger of leakage of oil from wrecks or trains or things of that nature. And so the energy does not so we're still meeting our energy needs. We're still progressing as a society, and we're protecting our environment. That's working smarter, not harder. One of the other things also, so these oil reserves, now I have to profess some level of ignorance on how that oil got there. We call it fossil fuel, and I've looked up what that means. And so we're saying It's created naturally, right? Not naturally, but through the decay or breakdown of organisms, and we mine that. I don't know how plentiful um, is that source of energy is, but why not make our primary source of energy the sun and the wind, and use those oil reserves as only a backup if that becomes necessary. And that to me is working smarter and not harder. We protect our environment. And so the question some people have brought up is the cost of it, and that becomes a discussion that becomes difficult to have, because if cost is your only, and I said this last week, if cost is your only measure of energy source, or how we fuel society, or how we move forward, then you don't really have an argument. What you are doing is you're advocating for no change, and no change does not help all of us if what we're doing has a harmful impact. Now, you may not necessarily believe that in 10 years we're going to be in a really bad fix because of global warming, or you may not even believe in global warming. But if you have a choice of using solar energy and having to mine, dig, and export oil, why would you continue to do that? What would be the logical reason for continuing that aspect of meeting our energy needs in the future? So it's just, the Green New Deal is just a smarter way of trying to meet our energy needs. And so having the discussion about how to implement that Green New Deal is, to me, more logical and reasonable than should we do that. And so I wanted to at least make those, fine-tune those points on that discussion, because I kind of left off that work smarter, not harder kind of a deal. And I really like that phrase. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the face of the Green New Deal, though we've had other attempts at adding renewable energy, or moving to a renewable energy. And so my concern about the discussion that we're having around renewable energy is, if there is, and I'll just say if, just for the sake of discussion, if there is a negative impact of fossil fuels on our planet, if there is a negative impact on our planet, when will that reach a tipping point of where it may be too late to make changes? So what we know in medicine is that if you ignore an illness for too long, it may reach a point where you cannot fix it. So if you catch it early enough, you may be able to ward off the negative impacts of that. If we are doing damage to our planet, and we proceed on the path that we're on, and we don't look at the possible negative consequences of it in time, there may be that point of no return. And if new renewable energies, you can actually make a solar cell in your home, at home. This is technology that is not super expensive from the research that I uncovered. And you could actually make solar cells at your home that could help you – become more energy self-sufficient. The So the discussion that we're having right now is a part, okay, there is a toxicity in our discussion in our politics right now, that is completely non-productive to problem solving. And recently, as I said, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the face of some of the changes that we're trying to achieve in better preparing our society to deal with energy consumption. And anytime that you're the first, or anytime that you're the head, or anytime you're the face of something, you're going to live with attacks. People are just going to attack you because you're visible. And if the attacks are my thrust is that the attack should be on the idea and not on the person. And hopefully the attacks are of an intelligent nature that we can have a rational, reasonable discussion. And it's difficult to see how we get from where we are to where we need to be. This past week, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez made some comments, and some people just lost their collective minds. I'm going to play you a couple of clips. The first is Ocasio-Cortez's comments, and then the second will be some of the responses. And these, well, let's start there first.
Our planet is going to face disaster if we don't turn this ship around. And so it's basically like there's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult. And it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. You know, is it okay to still have children?
Now, any reasonable person would understand what she meant by that. Planned Parenthood, which is not something that's new, planning children and determining if you want to have children is nothing new. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's nothing even controversial. Although there are some religious concerns about family planning, but I'm not approaching those. I'm just talking about, in general, just planning your family. Now, here's some of the responses from people with a microphone and a camera in front of them.
Hasn't told this idiotic windbag to be quiet and take a seat. Don't talk until you learn something.
Say, you don't know what you're talking about. Be quiet, come back when you grow up.
It looks like these Democrats don't seem to care about babies born in America, but they do care about the planet. In fact, AOC is now even wondering if people should just stop having children. Listen to this.
So some of the attacks are personal. They're, you're too young, you're not intelligent enough, you're spewing nonsense, rather than dealing with the actual thrust of what she's saying, or what we're talking about. And so when we attack each other in this manner, it is, I cannot believe it's very productive. It's more about beating each other and this win-win attitude and win-loss, rather than understanding that we can all win, and that it's important that we do. What kind of damage is done when we take very intelligent and productive people who are working hard to solve problems in our society, and we denigrate them? And the attempt is denigration. It's not to attack the idea, to better or refine the idea so that it's more inclusive or that it covers a particular issue. It's destroy the messenger and you destroy the message. And that to me seems like a completely counterproductive way to approach it. It's easily understood that people make decisions about having children based on if they want to bring a child into a society that behaves in a way that they don't feel is productive. And we protect our families from people who attack in the ways that some people are attacking others simply because they presented an idea that they disagree with. Democracy, which is an interesting, it's an interesting form of self-governance. Democracy, so I look at democracy like this. Democracy is a vehicle where everyone has a steering wheel. In order for the vehicle, so we're on the tracks. In order for the vehicle to get off the tracks, say we're headed down someplace, and in order to get where we need to go, everyone has a wheel, has a steering wheel, and they make a turn, whether left or right. And the vehicle slowly or quickly moves into the direction based on the number of people that turn in any particular direction. So the more people that turn left, the faster the vehicle moves to the left. The more people turn to the right, the faster the vehicle moves to the right. So it's important for everyone to make their point about which direction we should go and where we're trying to go and get to, and what is the best route to get there. So democracy is everyone participating and everyone taking that turn at the wheel and moving the vehicle in the direction that we need it to go. It is completely non-productive when we attack one another for their decision to turn in the direction that they want to turn. We've seen in this current environment, we've seen the Achilles heel of democracy. Democracy can be sidetracked, can be derailed by people with a vendetta. It can be sidetracked or derailed by people who have no intention of doing anything positive, but wrecking the situation. We have people who actually want to close down government. All people like having a place that they can call their home, that other people can't infringe upon their rights to do what they want to do. And government helps provide that. A gentleman has a home, or someone has a home, and they have a neighbor, because all land is going to be occupied to some degree. And so you're going to have a particular amount of land that you have access to. Now, if there's no borders, you still have to protect the space that you're in, because if someone decides that you're on their land and there are no borders, then how do you determine who's right? So democracy helps define some of the borders. It's an agreement where we all agree to, in some way, accept a set of rules that everyone should live by. And whether you completely agree with them or not, it does add a framework of behavior which allows you to expect certain behavior from one person and another person. If we don't have a government, then it becomes mob rule. That means if you decide that you have a square block or 2 square blocks or a mile of territory, and another person decides they want to infringe upon that territory, and they recruit other people and say, okay, we'll take that person's territory and split it up, without some form of pushback, without some form of protection, it becomes anarchy. It becomes mob rule. And so right now, what I believe we're seeing is an attack on, and there are a lot of people been saying that there's an attack on the rule of law, attack on government, and on democracy as a whole. And so that's what I wanted to point out is that if we're not striving to better perfect our democracy while arguing our points, then we're defeating the whole purpose of democracy, and we can wind up harming our system of government and our ability to work together as a community. So while I picked these particular examples, they were the most readily available examples, and regardless of which side, I would call out any actions to demean the individual over attacking the idea, or whatever ideas you put forth as far as how our democracy should work. You can attack those ideas with impunity, but attacking the individual is something completely different. It is, I don't have to give a logical reason for disapproving of the idea. If I attack the individual, then the idea falls. And so good ideas then wind up falling out of favor and not being implemented, and that is not beneficial to anyone. So that was a couple of podcasts ago. Now I want to cover a big business person. I'm a big time believer in free enterprise and innovation in business. And one of the things that I think has been fantastic as a young person, I always dreamed of we would have video phones. Of course, I thought of the desktop phones with a screen, and you'd talk to someone and be able to see them while you're talking to them. Well, that has come true. It is implemented and it is available today, and I take full advantage of it when I can, because it's part of the communication process is being able to interpret non-verbal cues, and watching someone's expression, watching someone's movements during communication can tell you about as much about what they're saying as hearing what they're saying. A lot of times, people say things and we could easily misinterpret it. Texting to me is probably the worst way to communicate because it does not give you a lot of reference. It does not give you a lot of context. You have to add the context yourself, and you have to take more guesses at what person means when they're saying something, and so that makes more of an opportunity that you're going to misunderstand them. And so what's happened in our society as technology has developed or evolved, small percentage of companies want to dominate that space. By doing that, they put in danger the gains that we've made in those areas, in the sense like, so I did a podcast on Facebook Frenzy, and it talked about some of the bad behavior that Facebook has exhibited, and when they're the dominant force in that technology, then we're either forced to live with them and their bad behavior, or we may have to, in order to pluck that bad behavior from our society, we may have to do without or back up on using that technology. And so hopefully, and you know, by me covering that, is that we become more aware of holding companies accountable for their behavior, regardless of whether they have dominated a sector or not. It's quite possible that some company that is in a particular business sector would grow and become more dominant in a particular sector, and their behavior from early is important. And one company that, in particular, that puts me in the mind of that is Instacart.com. So a friend of mine introduced me to Instacart, sent me a link, and they give you, $10, I think, for referral. So my friend would get $10 if I signed up for Instacart and purchased something. And Instacart is just a delivery service that has made an agreement with several businesses that you could shop online. They would put that together for you and then deliver it. So I thought I'd try it. Give it a try. No big deal. Because I'm big on technology, and I thought, well, just give it a shot. So I go out, I order a few groceries from a local grocer, and I didn't. So when you go to check out now, so the next topic is kind of part of this topic, because I talked about advertising, and I wanted to talk a little bit, make another couple of points about advertising. But what happens is, so you go to look for information on how a company operates. What you wind up getting is, rather than particulars about functionality, how they do this, why they do that, what you get is, this is great, all you have to do is sign up. And so basically they're trying to get you to sign up before you completely understand how they function, how they operate, and why they do what they do. So they don't try to give you particulars, they give you advertising, basically. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Make sure you do this. You don't want to miss out. Your friends, or, it's wonderful, and you can share this with your friend, and it's all advertising. It's all puffery. But anyway, so my friend sent me this link to Instacart. When you go to checkout, there's a small, tiny text. And the text is very close in color to the background, so it doesn't stand out very much. In that text, it says they're going to take 5 to 10%. They're going to put a 5 or 10% hold in addition to your order, just in case. But they don't tell you why. You have to do a deep search for that, because they hide that information. And so because of the way I have a card set up that I'm going to use online, I don't put extra funds in there. I know exactly what I need, and I make sure that that's in there so that I don't get a insufficient funds bill, which is $35 at my bank. I just happen to have an extra few dollars in this account, so that when I ordered and they did what they did, I just barely missed a $35 fee that for that bill. Now, what they do is they return back that extra 5 or 10% that they took. But the fact that I wasn't aware that they were going to take it was extremely aggravating for me. And it wasn't clearly spelled out, and it wasn't clearly readily available. And it wasn't that you would have put first. My anticipation is if my bill is $46, you will charge me $46. And that's that. So Instacart, pardon me, is it's on my never use again list. I don't like shady behavior. I don't like someone that takes advantage of me, and I felt that that's what they did. And I did some searching on issues with Instacart, and I would encourage you to do the same before using that service if you do use that service. And I did want to talk about a little bit about advertising. What I talked about earlier was some of the bad practices that advertisers use on the internet, and it has gotten worse. So while we're still having, I'm just yesterday and today, I'm watching a video, and I keep my volume at a certain level because it's necessary in order to not infringe upon other people's ability to hear and do things that they need to do around the house. So I get videos that just the volume just is like 4 times greater than the volume of the video that I'm watching. So now I've got to keep my hand on the volume control to avoid having blaring volume from an advertising. And then one other really annoying advertising practice is now in the middle of a page, they have, between paragraphs, they have advertising. And the advertising updates constantly. So while I'm trying to read, if the advertising is of a different size than the previous advertising, it shifts the page. Now I have to find my place where I'm reading and start from there. The thing is, this advertising shifts about every 5 seconds. About every 5 to 6 seconds, that advertising shifts. I mean, so I'm constantly having to readjust in a long article. I'm having to readjust my position. And this is so companies or content providers, in order to try to make money, insert these advertisements in their pages. That's a part of it. And then they try to encourage you that you're not allowed to visit their page if you have a ad blocker. So if you want to read an article without being harassed, it's not available to you in some sites. It is, we're going to punish you for coming to our site to view our content. And then my last item today is Jussie Smollett. So I've avoided commenting on that. You know what? I'm going to avoid that today. I'm going to wrap things up. I want to thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Hopefully I have at least added a finer point on some of the things that that I have presented to you in the past and shared with you today. So I want to, like I said, thank you very much for joining me. You can always find my podcast on YouTube. You're encouraged to participate in the podcast by asking questions and including your thoughts. To participate, just contact Altitude Adjustment by connecting via Skype at thelionsden.stl@gmail.com or Google at lionsdenstl@gmail.com. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to look out for this and other episodes where you listen to podcasts. Remember that your likes and shares are internet gold. So like and share this podcast where you find it. Remember to be cool and be calm, and above all, be careful. Look out for the other guy, because they may not be looking out for you.